that's the point I want to get through of this podcast, is not just sales. In fact, the more important KPIs for our audience, the entrepreneurs, are the internal KPIs that are run by the business.
In this episode, we break down key performance indicators, what they are, how to choose the right ones, and why tracking the right data can mean the difference between growing your startup or flying blind. Please subscribe to our podcast to stay updated. And for more information, visit our website at prospirit.com. Also, if you know someone who might enjoy our content, please share our podcast with them to help us grow.
The Let's Get Entrepreneurial podcast is your ultimate launchpad for igniting ideas and skyrocketing your entrepreneurial dreams. Your two hosts will be Professor Gary Palin and serial entrepreneur Ryan Budden.
Hello, Professor Palin. How are you today?
Doing very well. Busy as always.
Fantastic. It's summer now for you, right?
Yes, definitely. When this episode gets broadcast, it'll probably be halfway through the summer.
Yeah. I imagine summer is at least a little more fun, a little more hands-on experience with the students.
Yeah, and I have more time to do some writing and working on projects that we're working on.
Yeah, we were just talking about how you're writing a paper, keeping relevant. You're still moving the industry forwards, even though you're also working on your own ventures and you're still a teacher.
Doing my best.
Today, we've gotten together to discuss one of my favorite topics. I say that loosely. I say it's my favorite because I end up talking about it a lot, and I really enjoy some of the things we can get from it. So I'm excited to talk about KPIs. And if you've never heard of KPIs, they stand for Key Performance Indicators. Really fancy word for saying they're just certain things that we're going to focus on to track so we know how we're doing.
If you're a big fan and you use KPIs quite a bit in your own businesses and also in your consulting practices, and it's probably one area that many entrepreneurial ventures are not familiar with.
Or if you are familiar with it, it's because you once worked on a sales team that tracked how many outbound calls you made, and that was the only KPI that was tracked. It sort of became the devil. You hated it because that was the metric that was harped on all the time. That's not what we're focusing on today. We're focusing on KPIs for your entire business so you can really get a data-driven decision-making process.
So how would you define KPIs to a startup entrepreneur?
They're metrics, so certain things that happen. It can be anything from an outbound sales call, which we just said that's like kind of the common one that gets brought up, to a sale that's made, to a click from a website, to even $1 spent on the coffee machine. It's any piece of information that we're going to organize so that we can see the health of the business and make data-driven decisions.
Different KPIs can be assessed and utilized at different stages of growth of the ventures. For example, an early stage might be looking at customer acquisition cost or burn rate. Or if you're in the growth stage, you might look at the churn rate. There's different applications of KPIs at different levels or stages in the business.
I'll harp on this a lot more, but if I had to sum up what I'm trying to get accomplished is the more you think about this early on, just to start measuring things, the more power you have at the end of it. Because it's very hard to go backwards and grab data out of thin air. But it's easy to put things in place so that you're tracking that data, even if you're not currently using it, just storing it up for later decision making.
I would suggest starting the utilization of KPIs pre-launch, not even day one.
Absolutely. Or at least figuring out what KPIs are going to be important to you.
When I'm looking at KPIs, I look at the SMART concept. They have to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Right. You're using like a goal setting approach to KPIs. That's a good way of thinking about it because basically these KPIs are tracking whether you are achieving your goals or not.
I would start, if I've never heard of this, I would look at what are my business goals? For example, is it revenue-based? Is it customer growth? Is it retention? What are the goals I'm trying to achieve? And then determine what KPIs I need to measure this.
That's a great way of approaching it. Think of the end goal and then think about the things that have to be put in place to see if you're reaching that. I'll give you an example. Every company wants to increase sales. At the end of the month, you can just look at whether sales went up or sales went down. that's not giving you that much information when you actually look at it. Some KPIs that you could put along the way is how many marketing dollars went into that many sales. Because if you can see that marketing dollars went up and sales went up, you pretty much know more marketing dollars means more sales. It is incredible how many times I've been involved in a consulting venture to see marketing dollars swinging all over the place and sales stagnating. Meaning it's not necessarily a dollars issue. It could be, did our emails go up that caused sales to go up? Great. Our clients are really like getting emails. I say that because that's probably not going to be the case for your business. Nobody likes getting emails. It could be direct calls. It could be a specific form of marketing. It could be events that you're putting up.
Or you can measure website conversion rate, for example, if you're utilizing more online communication. Also, if you have a specific campaign that you're running, what's the return on investment for that specific campaign?
If you're using Google to run those campaigns, they have a lot of insight into KPIs. They do a lot of that tracking for you. You can track all the way from ads seen to dollars spent to website traffic converted to sales through your website, all in one place.
That's a question I have for you. Is there the tools that are available to track KPIs? Because you could simply use a spreadsheet, but there are various dashboards, platforms, CRMs, all types of aspects. What type of thing would you recommend when someone's looking at what tools do I use to measure my KPIs to make my life easier?
I'm not a marketing expert. I won't pretend to be a marketing expert. I use the services of a lot of marketing experts. Things like Google AdWords have their own KPIs locked into it. The KPIs I mostly deal with are through a CRM. It's input from the team, from sales to the marketing input to leadership input that you are then analyzing at the end of it.
You use it for marketing quite a bit, but it can also be used in other aspects like financial KPIs, customer KPIs, operational KPIs. You can keep going on.
And that's the point I want to get through of this podcast is not just sales. In fact, the more important KPIs for our audience, the entrepreneurs, are the internal KPIs that are run by the business. It's those financial KPIs and the core management KPIs through the business.
The financial KPI could be a monthly recurring revenue.
Monthly recurring revenue is a good one. It could be your cash on cash return. How much is going out? How much is coming back in?
Gross margins is something that you could be measuring also. We could sit here and talk for 2 hours and not even touch all of the things you could measure.
Right. It's important to go back to what you said in the very beginning. Look at what your goals are and then set the KPIs up to see if you're meeting those KPIs.
One of the things that I think is important for our listeners to understand are common mistakes. And one that I think of it is what we just touched on. There are hundreds, if not thousands of KPIs, but tracking too many KPIs is a common mistake.
You get the spreadsheet junkie who has 250 KPIs that they're trying to then data crunch at the end of the month. That's crazy. I don't know that I've ever thought about this, but somewhere in the realm of 3 to 5 per track, 3 to 5 financial, 3 to 5 operational, 3 to 5 customer service, 3 to 5 sales, and maybe a differentiate sales and marketing. So 3 to 5 marketing as well. If you were tracking those, you'd have a really good understanding of what's going on in your business.
And if someone, again, has never used KPIs, I would suggest start with one and understand the concept. Just get a feel for it and then expand to the next, until you come up with a manageable amount of KPIs that you're using. I would not throw in and say, I want to have 20 KPIs and jump at it from that perspective.
No, especially if you're not used to tracking and using them.
And my point, though, is if someone has never done one, pick one for a month and just try it to see what it's like. Once you've got a feel for it, then as you throw the 5 in that you want to say, it'll be that much more efficient and effective and you truly understand it. And also at the beginning, if you're launching the venture, time is your enemy. You don't want to throw too much time into playing with something you don't know.
That's exactly right. That is the importance of KPIs, and a lot of times why I harp on it so much when I get brought onto a new consulting project, because none of us have enough time in the day. Implementing these KPIs is a really easy way for me to tell you, hey, it's because you're spending 30 hours on Instagram marketing a week, and we can see that those ads aren't converting. we need to ramp that down or shift that KPI metric to somewhere else.
And I also find people will get impatient and they change the KPIs too frequently.
That's a quality of data problem. Measuring KPIs for 1 month isn't really going to be able to tell you anything you need for a long enough time where you can see a trend. This changed and this occurred because of that change.
The biggest mistake I see people make is they will execute the KPI, but they fail to review and act on the data.
Right. At least you're tracking it, though. At least you're tracking it, because it's hard to go back and get the data.
But the KPI is merely a tool to be utilized. Buying a hammer is not going to help you construct anything. You have to utilize the hammer.
Yeah, I like that. Another big one that I find a lot is that people will show me that they're tracking KPIs. They will show me what those KPIs are doing, and they won't actually analyze it. They'll just look at it as like a broad trend, and then they'll make the same emotional decision they were going to make before it. If you're going to use it, actually run an analysis. Let the KPIs tell you what's going on rather than just peering at it. And if you're listening to me thinking that sounds ridiculous, I'm saying that because I've seen so many people do it.
From your experience, how often do you review the KPI? Is it on a weekly basis, a monthly, quarterly?
I don't know whether this is the right answer, but I grew up in the technology development world where pretty much everything runs on a 2-week sprint. So I review it every 2 weeks. For some decisions, that's really a quick turnaround, and some decisions that might be slow.
I would recommend to set a rhythm. Don't do a few weeks and then skip to a month and then a quarter and back to a week. Choose a specific time frame. I would recommend make an appointment in your calendar so that's the time frame that you review it, be it weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever you decide upon.
And if you're tracking it using a CRM, you can automate reporting as well. It's a calendar reminder, and then I do automated reporting. That's the ease. It's the figuring them out and getting them in place that takes a while. I don't think we need to beat this one to death. It's a fairly obvious, once you've thought about it, goal to set in mind. What are you trying to do as your business, and what's going to allow you to track that?
Do you have any final suggestions, final tips before we wrap up?
I'll just harp on what I said at the beginning. KPIs are often viewed as purely sales. My call to action is make sure that you're looking at this for your whole business and not just the narrow focus on sales.
I would conclude with the saying, less is more. Don't get carried away. Don't pick 100 KPIs. Less is more will give you more high qualitative data to make decisions on, assuming that you've used your goals to drive your KPIs. And also, don't just track the data. Let it drive your behavior and strategy.
I love it. That's a great concept to think about. Well, let's get entrepreneurial.
Let's get entrepreneurial.
We extend our gratitude for your presence and attention. Check out profspirit.com to discover resources and courses designed specifically for innovators like you. Stay on the cutting edge by following us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and other platforms as it is released. Until then, keep the entrepreneurial flame burning.